Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Senate Committee on Legislative Affairs and Operations. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senator Daley.
Here.
Senator Cannizzaro. Senator Severs-Gansert. Senator Krasner. Chair Orenshaw.
Present. And Secretary, please mark the Majority Leader present when she arrives. I appreciate everyone being here today. We have a bill hearing and a work session. I'd ask everyone to silence their cell phones. If anyone wishes to speak, please provide if you're here in Carson City, please provide a card to our committee secretary down at the Sawyer building. You could please leave a card there with Legislative Council Bureau. We are very lucky to have one of our own members presenting Senate Bill 133 today. Senator Daley, we'll go with opening the hearing on Senate Bill 133, and then we'll have the work session a little bit later during the hearing.
You ready?
Please proceed when you're ready, Senator. Thank you for presenting the bill.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Richard Daley. I go by Skip, Senator for Senate District 13 in Northern Nevada, and here to present Senate Bill 133 regarding false electors and making that against the law, even more than it already is, in my view. So the bill and being able to prosecute someone putting in a false slate of electors, we don't really have any measure that actually prohibits that per se. You have false records. You can't submit false records to the state, or you could be possibly accused of trying to defraud the state. So having a statute that's on point for that, at those actions of submitting or attempting to submit or conspiring to put in a false slate of electors after a presidential election is what this bill aims to remedy. So I do have a proposed amendment. I understand it's up on Nellis, so people should have it. So I'm going to work off of that if it's okay.
That's fine, Senator Daley. That amendment should be on Nellis if anyone wants to reference Senator Daley's amendment.
So under the bill in section 1, it says a person shall not conspire to, and then it states create a false set of electors or serve as a false slate of presidential electors. And then a person who violates would be guilty of a Category B felony, shall be punished according with what the penalties are for Category B is 4 to 10 years. And the court shall not grant prohibition to suspend the sentence provision convicting conspiring to create a false slate. And then in the original bill, when you get to subsection 4 of section 1, where it says the Attorney General may institute, that's where I wasn't quite satisfied with the way it came out. And I think that's partly my fault. I didn't give good enough instructions. So I would propose to delete that and replace it with the provisions that are in green, and I'll explain why and what I'm trying to get done there. Which would then have a new subsection 4, add a subsection 5, 6, and 7, and then renumber number 5 and 6 to 8 and 9. So essentially what the new subsection 4 would allow is for the Secretary of State, who is the person responsible in the first measure under NRS, I think it's 298, regarding electors. So it would allow the Secretary of State, if there was a violation or potential violation on his own initiative or after receiving a complaint, to proceed with, if it appears there's been a violation, that he can conduct an investigation. We also want whoever the Secretary of State is to also notify the Attorney General's office that they instigate an investigation, and then they can cause the appropriate proceedings to be instituted to prosecute and enforce the provisions of subsection 1. The other thing they can do is, or they can refer it to the Attorney General. So I was trying to have the primary jurisdiction with the Secretary of State, but if the Secretary of State wanted to hand it off to the Attorney General, they could. if you had one or the other that didn't want to do anything, you had a Secretary of State that just says, no, I don't think there's anything there. The Attorney General could take it up, which is in the next section there. The Attorney General, on his or her own initiative, can initiate a proceeding of an alleged investigation. So actually, both sides can do separate or together, but I didn't want to have it just rest in one, so it can be one or the other. And then subsection 5, the new section, would basically spell out what a person has to do if they want to file a complaint, what the information that needs to be in the complaint, name of the person filing the complaint, the name and address of the person if known, alleged violation, clear, concise statement of the facts, any evidence to substantiate the allegation, a certificate by the person alleging the violations that the facts or the alleged are true and correct to the best of their knowledge, and then any other information to support the violation, which is similar to what we have in other provisions, I believe, in the Secretary of State's statute, if he's administering some other election violation. And then subsection 6 and subsection 7 goes to the Secretary of State if they're conducting an investigation. That he can issue subpoenas to get records, documents, various things, compel people to come in. And if they don't or fail to testify or produce the documents, then he can go to district court to enforce the subpoena that the Secretary of State may issue. Didn't have to put all that in for the Attorney General. They already have all of that authority and know how to do that. And then the bill would pick up in Section 8, state or local government may not appoint to public office or an employer person convicted pursuant to subsection 1. And then as used in this section, there's a definition for a false, what a false slate of presidential electors are. And then continuing on with the bill, actual bill, that would be the end of the amendment portion of it. When you get to section 2 and then section 3, it allows or provides for a person who otherwise gets out of jail, they are automatically given their right to vote, and a few other things. We have to add in the words, unless the person was convicted pursuant to subsection 1, they would not be able to run for office or be appointed to government positions. So that's essentially what we're trying to get done. I will say, if I can, before we go for questions, is that I did present the amendment and things I was thinking of. I sent it over to the Secretary of State, and I believe they were okay. I think there's a representative here that might be able to answer those questions. I also sent it over to the Attorney General's office. They did give me some feedback. Did have a meeting with them earlier today. We weren't able to get everything done in time for the hearing, but I think there are some suggestions that the Secretary of State has that will try to incorporate some details, primarily the provisions that I think the Attorney General's office had was they wanted to say, in addition to any other penalty, there could be a fine for restitution or just a fine. And they wanted to make more clear on what the actions are. They wanted to have a better definition of what submitting a false set of electors is. They were concerned that you might not be able to prosecute it under the definition you have. So they wanted to specifically be more, it's filing either with the Secretary of State, signing, submitting, either with the Secretary of State or the National Archivist or Congress or the Vice President of the United States. So those are some of the actions that you would have to take if you were trying to subvert, go around the Secretary of State and put in an alternate or fake set of electors. And I think those provisions and changes probably make sense to make sure they were concerned that there would be a prosecution problem if we didn't clarify some of that. So I did have that meeting with them, and we think there will be some clarifying provisions that will hopefully make the bill better work so that if there is a violation, it can be prosecuted.
Thank you very much.
Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Daley. I appreciate you working with the stakeholders. Is there anyone else you want me to call up as part of your presentation or open it up to questions right now?
No questions. I don't have anybody else to present, so.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Senator Daley? I guess one question I have, do you know if other states are pursuing similar laws like this right now with so many legislatures in session? And if you don't know, we can try to find out offline.
I do not know, sorry, Skip Daly for the record. I don't know if other states are. I know there were several other states that had similar things that happened in the state of Nevada, Georgia, Michigan, some others. And I do know under the federal laws that how electors are selected is in accordance with each state's legislature. So those rules are set, and that's the provisions that are under United States Code, 3 United States Code, on that the legislatures have the authority to set how the electors are selected. And we have that in our process, but I don't know if other states are pursuing that, or if they may already have provisions in their law that make it illegal, similar to what we're trying to do here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Daley. Not seeing any other questions, I would open it up to support for Senate Bill 133. If there's anyone here in Carson City who would like to speak in support, please come forward. Then we'll go down to the Sawyer Building, then we'll go to the phone lines. Thanks for joining us. Please state your name for the record and proceed. And I'm going to limit witness testimony, both support, neutral, and opposition, to 2 minutes per speaker. So appreciate you observing that.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Paul Catha, that's spelled C-A-T-H-A, and I represent the Culinary Union. The Culinary Union believes in democracy. Nevada has one of the most secure election systems in the country, and working people know that Nevada's election results are legitimate. In order to protect the battle-born state's electoral process, Nevada needs serious penalties to discourage attempts to rig future elections. If Nevada does not take steps now to guard against authoritarians who attempt to subvert the will of the people, there is a danger that they'll grow stronger and become a larger threat to our democracy. The Culinary Union supports SB 133 and strongly urges the Nevada Legislature to protect presidential elections by passing this bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Catha. Good afternoon. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. We are here today in support of SB 133. We saw during the 2020 election the problem of mis- and disinformation, which is something our organization works on every single day, and we saw the role that it played in those elections. We saw the embarrassing role Nevada played in that election. We must do better. This is a step to protect our democracy. We hope you pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Magnus. Anyone else here in Carson City in support? Good afternoon, Secretary Aguilar. Thank you for joining us today.
Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State, just here and speaking in support of the bill. Appreciate the Senator's effort to make this bill a reality and continue to look forward to working with him on the language. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Not seeing anyone else here in Carson City. I don't see anyone down at the Sawyer Building unless I'm missing someone. Broadcasting, if we could go to the phone lines, if there's anyone who wishes to speak in support of Senate Bill 133.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw. To testify in support of Senate Bill 133, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Queuing up a caller for you, sir. Caller, please press *6 to unmute your phone. Caller with the last 3 digits, 404. You are unmuted. Please proceed. Please ensure your telephone is unmuted on your end.
Oh, am I being heard?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. Please proceed.
Hello. My name is Keith Walker. I'm calling to speak in support of the legislation. I'm calling as a individual, not as a lobbyist, but somebody simply involved in supporting good government and following it. I saw with shock what was done when those Republicans showed up at a table outside the Capitol building back in December and signed fake documents seeking to undertake a fraud action against the people of the United States and the people of Nevada. And it is important to have clear penalties for that kind of action that is clearly wrong. And I urge all senators to support it, and hope that the media will take to task any of those who do not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Broadcasting, do we have anyone else who wishes to speak in support on the phone lines?
Chair, at this time, the public line is open and working. However, there are no additional callers on the line.
Thank you. I'd like to now go to neutral. Anyone who wishes to speak neutral on Senate Bill 133 here in Carson City? Okay, not seeing anyone in Carson City. Still don't see anyone at the Sawyer building unless they're standing behind that column. So please come forward if you're there, but if not, broadcasting, if we can go to the phone lines for testimony in neutral. And again, we're limiting witnesses to 2 minutes per witness.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to provide neutral testimony at this time.
Thank you very much, broadcasting. We'll come back here to the hearing room in Carson City, and we'll go to opposition to Senate Bill 133. Anyone who wishes to speak, please come forward, state your name for the record. And if you represent an organization, please state what organization you represent. And we're limiting testimony to 2 minutes per witness. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Janine Hansen, and I'm representing the Independent American Party today as I am the state chairman. Should a future presidential election have issues requiring litigation, Congress included the Electoral Count Reform and Presidential Transition Improvement Act of 2022, ECRA, in the passage of H.R. 2617, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023, which was signed into law by President Biden in January of this year. The ECRA clarifies the president, vice president's role in the proceedings as purely ceremonial. The measure also raises the bar for objecting to a state's slate of electors. Prior to passage, it required just one member of the House and one member of the Senate to challenge a state's electors, a provision that has been invoked by members of both parties in multiple presidential elections. The ECRA raised the threshold for an objection to 20% of the members of each chamber. The ECRA reforms sufficiently address the issues by encouraging litigation to be complete by the safe harbor date for electors, the day electors must vote, but not by mandating that litigation acknowledges that the judicial process must be allowed to run its course. It does this without making those seeking judicial relief into criminals, as proposed by SB 133. I think the penalty in this case is absolutely absorbent. Additionally, SB 133 has multiple provisions which make it unconstitutional. For instance, SB 133 references the Uniform Faithful Presidential Electors Act in Nevada, which may be unconstitutional because it injects several steps by the state of Nevada in the process of electors voting, which violate 3 U.S.C. and the 12th Amendment to the Constitution, which 3 U.S.C. specifically references. Electors are performing a federal function because electors' capacity to perform results from no power which has originated in the states, but instead springs directly from the Constitution Constitution of the United States.
And I'm so sorry to interrupt. We're at 2 minutes. If you could wrap up your
Yeah, I'm
comments.
just
Thank you.
wrapping up. Therefore, Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, governs their function. Just one sentence. SB 133 seeks to unconstitutionally limit electors from exercising their legal rights and is unnecessary due to the reforms passed this year in the ECRA. Thank you. Please vote no.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of this committee. For the record, my name is Cindy Martinez, 28-year resident of Washoe County. I am an honorably discharged veteran of the United States Marine Corps and an honorably retired Category 1 post-certified Nevada State Peace Officer. My testimony today is based upon my personal observations in 2020 and is solely my personal opinion. I respectfully request you to vote no on SB 133. The bill's proposed language newly creates a crime where none existed before. NRS 199.480 statutory definition of conspiracy would likely need to be amended to include this new crime. Furthermore, I perceive it to be proposed infringements on constitutionally protected rights of free speech, peaceful assembly, and petitioning the government for redress of grievances. To understand how we arrived at a bill proposing to trample constitutionally protected freedoms, a short review of history is required. In the dark of night in July 2020, the Democrat-controlled Nevada Legislature passed AB 4, which upended a long-established electoral process. 15 county clerks and 2 county registrars of voters hastened to implement the legislative intent of AB 4 in a little over 4 months. Those processes created a chaotic election environment in the midst of an electorate already battered and disenfranchised by the state response to the pandemic. I viewed the alternate slate of electors as a plan B, if you will, ready to be submitted in the event the court challenges were successful. They weren't, and the alternate slate became moot. This bill could potentially be used to politically prosecute citizens so engaged. A better solution to the chaos we experienced post-November 2020 election would be to revise and strengthen NRS and NAC to ensure Nevada citizens are confident their elections are conducted lawfully, fairly, and transparently. Please vote no on Senate Bill 133. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martinez. Thank you for your military service. Anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition here in Carson City?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Piro for the record, John-P-I-R-O, representing the Clark County Public Defender's Office. We only take issue with Section 1, Subsection 2, and Subsection 3. Here at the Public Defender's Office, we take justice for all seriously, even in the face of popular outrage and public opinion. And justice means nothing if it's not proportional, meaning the punishment must fit the crime. And in this bill, as drafted, this punishment is not proportional, Mr. Chairman. The people that stormed the January 6th Capitol and broke into Ms. Pelosi's office will get a lesser sentence than as proposed in this bill. If Senator Gansert were to stab Senator Daley in the heat of passion, she would get less of a penalty than is proposed in this bill. If you were to burglarize Senator Daley's office, you would get less of a penalty than what is proposed in this bill. So our proposed amendment brings this bill into proportionality. When this body passed AB 236 in the 2019 legislative session, we said that we weren't going to go back to how we were 35 years ago, just throwing everything into Category B until it balloons and basically eats up our criminal justice system. So this is a step backwards. This is a regression. What we're asking for is a positive move forward. If you want to criminalize it, so be it. That's the intent of this body, by all means. But let's do it in a proportional way. Let's do it so that we're not using the criminal justice system as a hammer to hammer people who generally made a mistake, to hammer our political rivals. So I would urge, unless this bill is amended to fix subsection 2 and 3 in section 1, I would urge this body not to pass the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Piro. Please proceed, Ms. Roth.
Thank you. Erica Roth for the record, E-R-I-C-A-R-O-T-H, on behalf of the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. I echo the sentiments of my colleague, Mr. Piro, in regards to the proportionality of the crime. As a public defender, I stand firm in my commitment to defending every person's constitutional protections, whether I agree or not with that conduct. Part of that is to advocate to maintain measured and proportional penalties. Now, my examples aren't as elaborate as Mr. Piro's, but I want to just make one example here, and it's a real one from the January 6th insurrection. Devlin Thompson was sentenced to 46 months in prison for assaulting a police officer with a speaker and a metal baton. He's looking at about the same amount of time as somebody if they were sentenced under this bill, a person who attacked and beat a police officer. So when we're thinking about who we are imprisoning, if they are convicted of violent felonies or not, I ask that this committee consider our amendments and ensure that we keep moving forward progressively within our system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roth. Anyone else who wishes to speak in the neutral position here in Carson City? Opposition, pardon me, in opposition. Down at the Sawyer Building, I still don't see anyone. But come forward if you're there. And not seeing anyone BP broadcast, can we go to the phone lines? And again, please state your name for the record. If you represent an organization, state what organization you represent. We are limiting testimony to 2 minutes per witness.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 133, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Cyrus Hojati, Cyrus-Hojjaty. I'd like to ditto all the other previous speakers that have talked about. As far as I know, I can say that there was a lot of fishy things that happened in the last several elections. I believe that it was 8 News Now. I saw a video that they were interviewing a DACA recipient who was voting in the election. And the fact that when we have like all these mail-in ballot votes, like days after the election, somehow the results are flipped, you know, that makes you think something suspicious is going on. And to those who believe that these elections are very safe and secure, I'd like you all to start with the fact that whether or not that these so-called COVID measures, the masks, the lockdowns, and especially the vaccines really work. Because if you can prove that all this stuff works first, then I think we will certainly believe the truth about the elections. And I do think January 6th was a serious issue, but we should also be concerned and have accountability of the 2020 riots that took place, because I filmed them. I was there in downtown. Other than that, thank you so much, and please just do some rewording. Yield my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hojjaty. Broadcast, anyone else on the phone lines who wishes to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 133?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. There are no additional testifiers on the line at the time.
I guess I just want to wait maybe another moment or two just to make sure if someone is trying to call in that they're able to. So we'll just wait another moment or so.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. VPS standing by.
Broadcasting, do you have any other callers who wish to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 133?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. However, no additional callers have phoned in at this time.
All right, well, thank you. Senator Daley, would you like to come up and make any closing comments? Thank you for presenting the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do have some closing comments. So I would like to first say that Nevada's elections are secure and fair, open. The election results were certified, and our law is very prescriptive on who the electors are, how they're appointed, what their duties are, what happens if they don't follow that through. So some of the testimony in opposition, this is not partisan, should be bipartisan. And frankly, I'm offended and a little disappointed in the testimony that suggested anything other than that. And I'm also disappointed and would take exception to anybody characterizing what happened with these people putting in the fake electors as a mistake. It was deliberate, was on purpose, was not a mistake. And as far as the penalty and the amendment and all that stuff, I've talked to plenty of people. My personal opinion is not strong enough. So I believe I've already compromised at the B level and reject the proposal from the public defenders. As far as the other testimony in opposition, I would characterize that as misinformed, red herring almost. The laws are very prescriptive as well as that. The selection of electors and the process for electors to cast their vote in accordance with that is set in 3 United States Code, and it clearly gives authority to state legislatures to enact how those electors are done on the Electoral College. It's a state legislator issue. It's not in violation of the Constitution, and it's got nothing to do with the cleanup or the attempt to clean up and make sure that the vice president's only ceremonial. How electors are selected is state legislature issue, and that federal bill didn't take that away or change that. Has nothing to do with this bill. Those are my comments, unless you have any other questions.
Members, any additional questions for our colleague? Nope. Well, appreciate you presenting the bill, and I know there was a hypothetical presented earlier. Anything that's missing from your office was not me. Did not burglarize your office, Senator Daley.
And I hope there'll be no stabbings either.
And now if Senator Daley would we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 133. If you'll rejoin us here with the committee, Senator Daley. We have 2 more items on our agenda. We have a work session on Assembly Joint Resolution 10 of the 81st session that was sponsored, or is sponsored by Assemblyman Watts. Proposes to amend the ordinance of the Nevada Constitution and the Nevada Constitution to remove language authorizing the use of slavery and involuntary servitude as a criminal punishment. This is a measure which passed unanimously during the 81st session in both the Assembly and the Senate. As members may recall, we were able to sit in joint session with the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. We did get to participate in that hearing and had the opportunity to ask questions. That's why I did not schedule it for a hearing over here in our committee, but straight to a work session. However, if members have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but if not, I would accept a do pass motion on Assembly Joint Resolution 10.
I'll make a motion to do pass.
I have a motion from Senator Krasner, and I think I heard Majority Leader second. Any discussion on the motion, members? Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Madam Secretary, if you'll please note that Assembly Joint Resolution 10 did pass unanimously. And Majority Leader, may I give you that floor statement? Thank you. Thank you very much. I think the last item on our agenda is public comment. So public comment, if there's anyone here in Carson City who wishes to make public comment, down at the Sawyer Building or on the phone lines. And again, I remind anyone, public comment would be anything that you're interested in, but not pertaining to the bill hearing, because we already had the hearing on Senate Bill 133. So I don't see anyone in Carson or at the Sawyer Building broadcasting. Is there anyone on the phone lines who wishes to make public comment?
Thank you, Chair. To provide public comment, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
And I didn't mention public comment as well as 2 minutes per person testifying.
Chair, the public line is open and working. There are no callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
All right, well then, with that, I want to let members know that we will not be meeting on Thursday. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, and we are adjourned.